Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Hi,
Hi. Yes.
Namrata.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us and being willing to share your insights with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's a very good group to be talking to as well. Everybody seems very enthusiastic about understanding what goes along with the long rides too. So I was listening to some part of the previous conversation, and I think they do have quite a few queries as well that, in terms of what foods that would suit,
Yeah.
what they can try out. So I'm hoping that my talk today should help them out at least like a bit,
Yeah.
with clearing out the doubts and helping them to even try out a few things, because now is probably the time for them to try that out and then just implement it during the race as such.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, everyone, I have shared with you all about Namrata. Namrata is a sports nutritionist who's got quite a lot of experience with giving nutrition advice to people. She has also given nutrition inputs to Kabir for during RAM, I think. And Kabir was the one to recommend having Namrata come and share her insights with us. So I'm going to hand over to Namrata to please, finish your introduction. Just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and you can start your session.
Sure, I will do that. In the meanwhile, if you can just give me access to share my screen also.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so just to just to a bit about myself. Yes, I am Namrata Gulati. I am a qualified sports dietitian. I have a master's in sports nutrition and have been practicing in the field for around 9+ years now. Uh, I have been fortunate to have worked with a lot of athletes over the last 9 years and from varied sports. So whether it comes to endurance sports or ultra endurance, or even when it comes to anaerobic sports, okay, like wrestling, boxing, etc. My passion as such is more towards endurance and ultra endurance sports, because I myself also run marathons. So that's where, because I get to practice a lot of those things even on myself, that is what interests me as well also. Yeah, that's just a bit about myself. And what we're going to be doing today is, I heard that the group is a mixed crowd wherein there are people who have done a lot of races in the past, whereas there are people who are probably trying this out for the very first time. There are a lot of beginners. So I wanted to keep it a mix so that everybody can take back a bit from today's session. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. It's going to be a little bit of basic stuff, whereas a little bit of advanced nutrition, because that is what is essential. And I've tried to keep it something that probably is not found very easily over the internet, and something that not everybody really knows about. Okay, so I've tried to keep it a little offbeat so that you guys can actually pick out things that would work best for your body, for your training. You can start probably trying those strategies out, so that for the run, then you can choose whatever works best for you and then start implementing that as well. I'm just going to share my screen, and we should be good to start then. Okay. Is my screen visible to everybody?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Yes. Okay, so before we get started and before we get into the topic straight away, I just wanted you all to understand a little bit about what is sports nutrition and how did it really originate, because that will help you to understand how to fuel your body, how to fuel yourselves before an actual ride, before you go on your before your trainings, before your long rides, how to really fuel yourself. Okay. um, Everybody knows that when you either when you're running or when you're cycling, the main motive behind it is to complete that race. Correct? That's what everybody looks forward to doing. You may come first, you may come second, may come third, you may not have a podium finish, but your target, of course, is to get a particular time that you are training towards, and you want to make sure that you can complete that race. That is what is the, of course, that is what is everybody's end goal. To finish a ride or to finish a race is what is the end goal. So just a very small story about how sports nutrition came into being as well. In 1903, this is when people back then used to not really do long distance running. A man named as Mr. Hicks, he attempted the 42-kilometer marathon for the very first time. He was the first person to actually attempt such a such a long distance of a marathon as well. Okay, and of course, for him also, the major goal was to finish the run. That is what he wanted to basically do. Everybody knows now that just the feeling that if you complete the run and if you can't be there to even pick up your medal or to if God forbid something happens and you get bad cramps or you're not really in a state and you can't pick up your medal. Imagine if you've gotten like a podium finish but you still can't receive your prize. That is probably one of the worst feelings ever. So Mr. Hicks, he actually completed the 42-kilometer marathon. But at the end of it, he was in such a bad state that he had to be rushed to the hospital and he couldn't really receive his prize out there then. What really happened on the route is what we're going to try to analyze a bit. And if you guys can participate, would be really great because we'll try to understand what exactly is went wrong in the run as well. Okay, so of course, yes, it was a 42-kilometer marathon. There were only 2 water stations in the whole run, okay, because prior to this, nobody had really attempted such a long distance run. So nobody was really aware of what the fluid strategy should be, how frequently one needs to hydrate, etc. Nobody was really aware. And there were only two water stations. Of course, back then there weren't really bottles that people could carry around and run as well. Okay. What exactly happened is that at the 30th kilometer, when he really was absolutely about to faint and required water, he was given 1 egg white and a wet sponge just to wipe the sweat off. Okay, there was again the water stations were done or were nowhere around. He was given 1 egg white and 1 wet sponge just to wipe himself out. Then again, at a few kilometers later, he was given 2 egg whites and 1 shot of brandy and saccharin, which basically back then was considered as a stimulant. Okay, so how these days we use caffeine as a stimulant to keep going. Back then, there was something known as saccharin, which was basically used as a stimulant as well. This is what he was given a few kilometers later. Of course, then towards the end of the run, okay, there were 2 hills. Preceding both the hills, what nutrition or what basically Mr. Hicks was given also is again 1 egg and along with that 1 shot of brandy before he started climbing both the hills. Of course, at the end of this run, he did manage to complete the race. He did manage to pull himself through with the help of his, of course, a few friends and the crew who helped him across the finish line also towards the end. But he was in such a bad state that, of course, he had to be hospitalized for the next 36 hours. Okay. Just if you look at this graph, if somebody can pick out what are some of the things which were done wrong during this entire run, would anybody like to comment on it? What do you think is that was not really right or should have been done differently? Anybody can just give it a shot. Yes.
There's absolutely no form of hydration and then use of alcohol, which is like strongly disadvised in post-nutrition.
Exactly. Okay, so of course there is alcohol which further dehydrates the body. Okay, so one is, of course, he is in a dehydrated stage because there were only 2 water stations. Then he was given, of course, the body temperature is what rises when you're doing any form of physical activity, which most of you also, because you all are training, you understand that when you sweat out, the body's temperature increases as well. So the body's temperature is high, plus you're giving alcohol, which further dehydrates you or increases the body temperature. Of course, that is not really an ideal situation also to deal with. And then, of course, he's given eggs in between the race, which is also a form of protein. Okay. Again, protein is not the best substitute or is not the right form of fuel that your body may be able to take when you're doing a very high intensity, long distance or a long duration workout or a training as well. Okay. So this is basically, these are some of the few pointers which were, of course, not really at par with what should have been followed also. And this incident of the 1903 marathon is what led to understanding how important is it to fuel the human body for such high performance. Okay, because prior to this, nobody had really attempted such a high performance race. So this is what actually led to the lab work, led to the research work. And then there was, of course, there was Gatorade, which of course came in, which was discovered by the University of Florida. They worked upon it and they came up with the formula, which is Gatorade, which I think practically around the world, which is something that is used very, very frequently. And in most races, in most runs, it is what is the fueling source which is utilized. This is just a little background to understand of how sports nutrition came in. Talking about as a cyclist, because you guys are into ultra cycling, you train for long hours in order to compete. Also, I think the first race which is coming up now is the Deccan Cliffhanger, which is almost a 400-mile race. So your training intensity is also very, very high. So to understand what exactly are the nutrition requirements, we're going to be talking about the basic fuel sources and what are the different kinds of offbeat things that probably some of you all have tried out, and maybe something maybe really new for a lot of you all, which you can try out now as well. So of course, we understand the basic fuel sources that the body utilizes is carbohydrate, fat, and protein. These are the three major fuel sources that your body utilizes in order to give you energy as well. Of course, then there are micronutrients. There is your other micronutrients, which include your vitamins and minerals, which are also essential. But practically for energy, your body utilizes the three major macronutrients, which are carbohydrate, fat, and protein. How do you really consume this during your ride? Okay. How do you make use and what you should be consuming, what time of the ride is what we're going to be talking about. So first fuel source, which is the most important for all endurance and ultra endurance athletes, is of course carbohydrate. Okay. Pre-training, when you're looking at carbohydrate, your pre-training meal, almost 60 to 70% comes from carbohydrate, because that is the fuel source that your body is going to utilize for energy as well. Of course, everybody has heard about carb loading, which you do prior to a race or you do prior to a long run, which basically means that you incorporate a lot of carbohydrates compared to your fat and your protein-based foods as well. Okay. So few things that you guys can probably try out, and what as per research actually works best for athletes also. One is, of course, 2 hours prior to you starting your training. Okay. I'm going to be talking about training right now, because I think what you really need to do at this moment is that start trying out all this for your training. And then as your body and as your gut gets comfortable with it, is what you implement, or you start implementing this for your longer rides. And then you start, of course, you use that even for your race day. Okay. So 2 hours prior to your training session, the foods that work really well, carbohydrate foods that you could include is, of course, oatmeal, which is just oats, or even dalia. Okay. Just add it, made in water. Milk is not the best substitute, because not everybody can really take milk. But if your stomach is absolutely fine, you can also add that to milk and have it. Okay. So oats gives you sustained release of energy. Similarly, you can also do slices of bread with jam, or like with a banana, which is also a good source of carbohydrate to have 2 hours prior to your race or to your training. Of course, if you have a stop, which is going to be a longer stop during your ride, or if you're going to be training, say post lunch time or post dinner, some people also do night riding. So if you're going to be training post your dinner meal, a very simple food source is your combination of your dal and your rice, of course, because it is the best source of carbohydrate with just a little bit of protein that your gut is very, very easy to have. Also, dahi works well for most people too. So this is about 2 hours prior to your training or 2 hours prior to your race. Just about 30 minutes prior is when you need a quick source of carbohydrate, okay? Because all the other sources that we spoke about earlier, those are slightly heavier, which they contain fiber as well. So your body may not really be able to take it if you have it very, very close to your ride or very, very close to your training. So 30 minutes prior to your training, the ideal sources, of course, is bananas. Bananas work excellent because they also have your pre and probiotics, which basically are very good on the gut as well. Okay, and it gives you instant source of energy. So bananas is, of course, the number one thing. Apart from that, you, of course, have anjeer or figs or dates that you can also have, whatever you are comfortable with. Intra-ride carbohydrate sources or fluid is every 20 minutes. What works best, just to understand, is that every 20 minutes sip on a fluid. Okay, so fluid that contains carbohydrate and an electrolyte rich drink. Now, carbohydrate and electrolyte rich drink would be something that, like, say, for example, if you use a source like Enozal, or if you're using something like a Fast Enough Preload, or you're using whatever that you are comfortable with, that you have been using, or you want to try out, start trying that out right away. Because only once you have to understand that your stomach or your gut can actually be comfortable with those, and then you can start using them for the longer rides as well. Okay, so every 20 minutes, sipping onto fluid is what is absolutely essential to prevent you from going into dehydration as well. And just plain water, especially for a longer ride, is not going to be adequate. You need to have that carbohydrate and the electrolytes basically to keep your energy levels also going. Otherwise, you are going to reach fatigue. Immediately post the ride, the carbohydrate source to have is about 30 to 40% of simple carbs. Okay, so simple carbs again is a fruit source. So bananas are the quickest simple carbs to have. Dates are again quickest source of simple carbs to have immediately after your ride or after your training as well. The next fuel source, of course, is fat. We will look at what are the combinations that you can do going ahead as well. But the next fuel source that is essential for giving you energy, of course, is your fat. Okay. Now, fat essentially intra-training or intra your ride and immediately post-training or post your ride is not really advisable, because fat is very heavy for the body to break down. Okay, so ideally you will not really have a food source or a fuel source which is high in fat. When I talk about fats, I mean nuts like almonds, walnuts, or say, for example, even any form of oily foods are not really the best to have intra-ride or post your ride. But pre-ride, about 45 minutes to an hour pre-ride, what works really well is to have these healthy fats, because your body can then break them down and start giving you energy once you start with your training as well. Remember that fats, basically, to be utilized as a source of energy, to break down and to start getting used as a source of energy, they take a lot of time. So it takes at least 45 minutes for the process to kickstart. Okay, so that's the reason why it's the ideal source to have 45 minutes to 1 hour prior to your training or to your race as well. Next fuel source, of course, is protein. Now, protein is essential. I think, especially, yes, of course, we talk a lot about carbohydrates being the major source of fuel for endurance and ultra endurance athletes. But you have to understand that protein is also absolutely essential, especially depending upon the timing of protein, because it is the major fuel source that will help you to recover better. It is the fuel source that will help you to retain your skeletal muscle mass as well, because you don't want to lose out on any skeletal muscle with your training, with the high intensity training that you are going to be doing. Automatically, when you lose down or when you cut down on skeletal muscle, it becomes difficult to basically to push further as well. Okay, so pre-training, 20% of your meal 2 hours prior to training should have some amount of protein. Good food sources, of course, is 2 hours prior. Okay, is eggs. You can get chicken if you're a non-vegetarian. If you're a vegetarian, you can get boiled black chana as well. That's a very good source to have of protein 2 hours prior to your training, or 2 hours prior to your race. Whereas just 30 minutes prior to the start, it is essential to get a small amount of protein. Okay, so the protein can be in the form of dahi, can be in the form of egg white, not a whole egg, because fat is something that we need to avoid. So you can get dahi or you can get egg whites as well in just 30 minutes prior. This is important because amino acid, it is seen that when you start doing long duration exercise, okay, your body at once the carbohydrate sources, if it runs out of it, it starts breaking down protein in order to give you energy. And if your body, if you want to avoid the breakdown of protein in your body, if you want to avoid your muscle protein to break down, you need to have a little bit of amino acids before you start off on your ride or before you start off on the training as well. Intra-ride, there would just barely be about 5% of protein that you need to have, which should come via amino acids or BCAA, which is in the form of a supplement. Nothing that you would eat that would really include a protein source, unless of course you have a long stop. Okay, so unless you're stopping, if it's an extremely long ride and if you're stopping for fuel, wherein you're going to probably take like a nap also for 45 minutes to an hour or 2 hours, whatever, depending upon the race that you are doing, then of course you would get a little bit higher protein source, but otherwise only in the form of a supplement coming via amino acids or something known as a BCAA, which is your branched chain amino acids as well. Post training, this is when protein plays an absolutely essential source, and you need to get a good quality protein. Okay, so a good quality protein, it's not just about the quantity but about the quality. The good quality protein sources include all your dairy products, a good quality protein. Of course, non-vegetarian foods are all good quality protein. For vegetarians, the best source is to get a combination of a cereal and a pulse. Okay, so some options, of course, is if you can do a whey protein shake post your training or post your ride, immediately post within the first 20 minutes, because that is your body's window of golden opportunity, which means this is when your body can reabsorb maximum amount of protein to basically to make up for the muscle loss that has happened during your ride as well. Okay, so a whey protein source, or you can do egg whites, or you can do even something sattu in buttermilk. That's also, if you're a vegetarian or if you're a vegan, you can just add sattu in plain water and also consume that. That would also be an ideal source to have immediately post your training as well. Okay. Now, these, of course, are just the macronutrients, but how to really play around with these as a meal plate, okay? How would you really put them out is what we will be looking at as well. So some of the meal combinations, just to ease, I know the previous slide was a little bit percentages and what to get in, but how would, as a combination meal, how would you really incorporate these? Okay, so your food plate to us prior to training probably would include something like a rice. If you're a roti eater, maybe get rotis as well, but rice works really well because it's lighter on the gut. So get rice, get a little bit of vegetable curry. No raw salads, you should be avoiding that because that is very heavy on the gut again. And get protein, of course. Okay, so that could come in the form of chicken or eggs or boiled chana. 30 minutes prior to your ride, the combination of foods that you can look at is dahi with a fruit or muesli with milk, if you're okay with it, or even peanut butter with slices of bread. Okay, that would also work absolutely well for most people. What would you have during the ride? If it's a short ride, of course, plain water every 15 to 20 minutes is adequate. If you can add a little bit of lime and just like a pinch of salt to it, also excellent, but that should suffice you. If it's a mid-distance ride, you need to get a carbohydrate and an electrolyte-based sports drink, which you need to keep sipping every 15 to 20 minutes. And this, of course, if you try out directly on the race day, is not something that, that your gut may be able to take very comfortably. So you have to start training with it. Okay, so even if it is a mid-distance ride, which you feel that it's not a time trial, so you just want to take it easy, but still you need to start practicing your nutrition strategies also, so that on the race day you are comfortable with the same. Of course, if it's a long distance ride, you not just need a carbohydrate and an electrolyte based drink every 15 to 20 minutes. But along with that, you also need a little bit of amino acids. Okay, so amino acids will go in the form of BCAA. If you have hills, if you have an uphill, then prior to prior to going uphill, what works generally well is a little bit of caffeine, which could be in your gels, or even taurine. Okay, so taurine is again a form of amino acid, which really gives you the stimulation and gives you the extra boost to even go uphill. Okay, but again, these are all products that you need to try out before you start, before you go on to the race. You need to try it out over a month's period of time at least, to see what works best for your gut and for to give you energy as well. Immediately post a ride, what your meal plate would ideally look at is I'm talking about immediately post a ride. Could be a whey protein shake, or you can do an egg white sandwich or sattu with buttermilk. And 2 hours prior to your training or prior to your race, it is again important to get a good quality protein. Okay, so a lot of people focus on refueling on the carbs once the just immediately post training or post race nutrition is done. But 2 hours prior to your training, also the body is still in recovery zone, and you need to give it a good quality protein. So again, include either chicken, eggs, rice, or you can include your dal, chana, etc., with some amount of rice and veggies. Or if it's a snack based meal, you can also have a vegetable sandwich with a little bit of with some amount of egg or an omelette or so that you can also get. Okay, so this is what your meal plate ideally would look like, also pre, intra, and post your training or post your ride. Just to emphasize on this, moreover, please try out whatever strategy works well for you during your practice runs and keep repeating that. So say, for example, if today you are doing, say, a 100-kilometer ride, okay, practice the strategy. If you increase that to a 200-kilometer ride, use the same strategy. Probably you may have to just increase the quantity and the duration of how frequently you are intra workout, you're getting the gel, you're getting you're sipping on the fluid, what you're eating. You'll probably have to do that, but start training on it and then utilizing the same strategy as you go ahead also with the training. Okay, moving ahead. So like I was telling you all, we're going to be talking about a few probably unique strategies or ergogenic foods that would help you to probably improve your endurance, would help you to improve your rides as well. Okay. The first one that we're going to be talking about is watermelon juice. Okay, watermelon juice. Now, research has actually shown that watermelon is very rich in basically an amino acid called as citrulline, which is a precursor for arginine. I think most people must have heard of arginine, which also goes in a lot of pre-workout supplements. Okay, now this arginine basically helps in production of nitric acid in the body, and it reduces the lactic acid content. What happens when lactic acid builds up in your muscle is that there is a lot of muscle stiffness. It can slow you down. It can make you nauseous as well. Okay, so watermelon juice, when it is consumed prior to starting your training or prior to starting your ride, is what helps to, basically it helps to increase the physical performance and to perform more intensive training as well. Okay, so faster recovery is what you will notice, that is your body recovers much faster if you've had watermelon juice prior to starting off on the ride or prior to your race as well. And the dose is about 500 ml of natural watermelon juice, which will help you to achieve the same. The next ergogenic aid that we're looking at is MCT oil or cold pressed coconut oil as well, which again may help some athletes, and there's a lot of research which shows that it helps to increase the exercise performance in a lot of endurance and ultra endurance athletes as well. Okay, now MCTs of course have gained popularity with athletes to increase their energy levels and to enhance endurance in high intensity exercise. Okay, this is mainly because what happens is that when you give MCT oil, it shifts your body to utilize fat as a source of energy instead of burning into your carbohydrate and your protein sources. Okay, this helps you to give you sustained release of energy, because at the end of the day, fat is basically the molecule that gives you maximum amount of energy. One molecule of fat, when it breaks down in the body, it gives you about 9 calories. Okay, so it helps you to expend 9 kilocalories. Compared to carbohydrate and protein, when they are broken down in the body, you only get about 4 kilocalories. Okay, so MCT oil, again, prior to your training, prior to your race, when you consume 1 teaspoon of MCT oil, either added to water or lemon water, is what will help the body to shift into using fat as a source of fuel. This, of course, works best when you use a condition which is known as fasted state cardio, okay? Which means that before your ride, or at least 2 hours prior to your ride, you've not really eaten anything. You do empty state, you basically do fasted state cardio, or fasted state rides that you would do, or fasted state runs that you would do, only with the MCT oil, 1 teaspoon of it prior, about 30 minutes prior to your ride. This will also help to increase your endurance, will help to basically to increase performance by increasing your endurance as well. The next, of course, food item, which has potential, or which basically research has shown to help to improve endurance and to help to basically achieve better exercise performance, is green tea extract. Okay, now green tea extract basically is made from green tea. It's just in the form of a capsule or in the form of a tablet, because you extract the main molecules of the green tea into it. What research states is that a study testing the effect of green tea extract found over 10 weeks endurance and exercise performance was boosted by 8 to 24%. Okay. Now, this, of course, is a huge drastic difference. So even if your performance or your endurance performance can increase by 8 to 24%, will make a huge difference. And like you see, you need to have that at least for 10 weeks for the results to show. Okay, so you can't think that you're going to try this out, say, just about a week prior to your race and expect it to show miracles, because that's now not how food works. You need to have it over a period of time for it to show the result as well. So the dose is, of course, is 500 mg of your green tea extract once a day. If you don't want to get onto a supplement, even having 4 cups of green tea is equivalent, which would give you the adequate amount of the components of the green tea, which will help you to boost the exercise performance as well. Of course, the next one, this ideally is one of my most favorite, food items, or something that I have personally seen great results with, and even with a lot of my athletes, which is beetroot juice. Okay, beetroot juice shows an excellent result on increasing endurance performance as well. Because what basically beetroot does is that it increases your nitrates in the body. Okay, they're very rich in nitrates. And nitrates, basically, they help to increase your lung volume or your lung capacity. That means the amount of oxygen that your lungs can basically pull in. So when that happens, automatically your endurance is much, much better, because, of course, we all know that when you're doing any form of physical exercise, especially an endurance-based one, your body basically requires oxygen as well, because that's what your muscles will require to keep going on as well. So beetroot, of course, there's a lot of study on research, even and research done on beetroot juice, which even if you go and you try to look up on the internet, there's a lot of research which has shown that beetroot juice improves the cardiorespiratory endurance in all, not just in athletes who are untrained, but also in trained athletes. Now, trained athletes, of course, are athletes who have been doing exercise or have been training for years. Even in them, that it has shown to have great improvement in the lung volume and the lung capacity and the VO2 max as well. And the last and one of the most interesting one is just carbohydrate rinsing, okay, which is basically when you don't really ingest a carbohydrate, but you basically just switch it in your mouth. Sorry, it's a tongue twister for me. So again, out here, research has proven that carbohydrate mouth rinse, okay, so that means when you get a sports drink, which has especially maltodextrins in it, okay, this is something that all of you will have to keep reading at the back of whatever products that you're using. Read it on the nutrition labels, just turn around the packs and read it. So maltodextrin, okay, which basically is a type of carbohydrate. If your sports drink or your sports gel has this, if you don't really need to ingest it all the time, okay, but even if you just take it in your mouth, just swish it around for 5 seconds and then just spit it out, that also directly acts as a reward for the brain. And this helps to increase the performance as well, okay, because a lot of times what happens is that a lot of athletes cannot always take a high carb load. Okay, that is, you can't really ingest a lot of high. So I was listening to somebody who had a lot of gut issues and bloating with trying out the gel also prior to my session started. This could happen because your gut is not used to that amount of carbohydrate when it's in such high pressure, when you're doing the intense activity as well. Okay, especially for such individuals, this carb rinsing or it just in the mouth really helps. So you don't really, so say for example, it's a sports drink. Okay, you just take a sip of it, you just rinse it in your mouth for about 5 seconds and you just spit it out. This automatically also just gives your brain a reward mechanism, is how it works. Okay, so it just gives your brain it just activates the reward mechanism, and you automatically can perform much better without actually causing your gut to go through the stress. Okay, so these are some of the quick strategies that probably some of you can try out as well, which could really work out for you. And again, I would reinstate the fact that please try them out, start trying them out, figure out what works best for your body. Not everything you can use as a strategy. Probably try the different ones out, see what works best for your body, and then continue to use that for your training. And then of course on your race day as well. Okay, with this, we come to just talking a little bit about the Deccan Cliffhanger, because that's the race which is coming up, that most of you are also, as to what I know, enrolled in. Okay, I don't want to go into a lot of details because I understand that some of you are going to be doing a solo ride, whereas some of you are going to be doing the relay. There are, of course, there are people who are going to be riding with a crew. There are people who are going to be doing a solo ride. Your nutrition strategy, of course, is very, very variable. So we can't talk about everything out here because you will need to understand what works and how you can practically use it. But just a few tips or few things that we can look at as well. Okay. This is something that, of course, that even I found very easily on the website. So you, of course, have your entire, you will be sent out this as well, and it's available on the website as well, where all you guys are going to have a stopover. Okay, so of course, the distances that you will be covering before you have a stop where you can fuel yourself. Of course, hydration, that is water and fluids, is what you will always keep doing that on the route as well. But at least where you can start planning and where you're going to be getting the food and what all is going to be available at that point is what you can research on well, to make sure that you start training your bodies on the food that is going to be available over there. Of course, if you have a crew, the crew can make things available for you, and that whatever you prefer is going to be there for you as well. But especially for the ones who are doing a solo ride, make sure that you go through the map very, very well, see where the stops are, and figure out what are the foods that are available at that point. Maybe you can talk to a few people who have done the race earlier. They would know what exactly is available over there. You can talk to the organizers to understand what are the kind of foods that are going to be available, because you want to try and test that in your trial rides as well. Okay, you never want to try something absolutely new on the race day because you don't know how your gut is going to take it. Okay, so some of the nutrition planning strategies, what you need to practice and tracking is, one is to understand the foods that boost energy for you. Okay, so say for example, if I am somebody who needs carb loading 2 days prior to my run or to my race only, 2 days is more than enough for me, because it helps me to get the maximum amount of energy for the run or for the ride. This I will know only when I repeatedly try that out. So you need to try that out, whether you need 1 day of carb loading, whether you need 2 days of carb loading, whether you need 3 days of carb loading. Okay, what works best for your body as well. You will have to figure that out during your rides, and the kind of foods also that suit well. Okay, so say for example, for some people it could be just like a dal khichdi or a dal rice, whereas for some people something like a pasta and a pizza would work really well. For some people it could be just sweet potatoes boiled as carb loading is what works really well. So you need to figure out what works best for you and then start working on that as well. Second thing is, of course, very, very important is your hydration strategy. So this we have spoken about, that of course as a golden rule, every 20 minutes you need to take a sip of water or fluid or your hydration beverage that you're using as well, or do just a mouth rinse if you can't take the amount of fluid or you can't take the amount of carbohydrate based drink that also goes well for you. If your gut can't take that, then just do a carb rinse as well. Some of the important things or some of the strategies that work really well is that when you have to go uphill, okay, before you're going uphill, try a caffeine based gel. Okay, so caffeine basically acts as a stimulant, helps most people to perform, of course, better, because it just helps you give that extra rush to even move up the hill. Another thing is taurine based sports gels. Okay, so taurine is a amino acid like we spoke about earlier. A lot of your gels also have taurine in them. Okay, so taurine again is something that really helps to again acts as a stimulant and helps you to go up. So try them out for your practice races and see what works best for you, and then of course ensure that you're getting it on your route as well. Make sure that your bowel movements and your gut health is at its best. Okay, so when I say bowel movements, what time? So for example, the race I see starts at 8:15 a.m. Okay, you have to make it a practice that you're clearing your bowels prior to this timing before you start out on the race. Okay, because you don't want to go with a heavy stomach that's going to just slow you down, that you may just need to stop en route also to use the washroom very early on, which could basically of course slow you down as well. Okay, so your bowel movements is what you have to start practicing. So get enough water. 5 p.m., 5 to 6 p.m. is the time, or is in the evening is when you should try to get a lot of fluids in. You should try to get, if you can't clear your gut first thing in the morning, start eating prunes at that point. Okay, so prunes are dried prunes that you get very easily at most of your local stores as well, or even raisins, black raisins, which are soaked. Okay, at between 5 to 6 p.m. in the evening is when you should try to start getting this, so that first thing in the morning your stomach is absolutely clear before you start off on the ride as well. Okay, so that is something that start working on, because you know what your schedule more or less looks like as well. And then of course the recovery nutrition post the ride, that is very, very essential, because right now, say for example, if you do a 300 kilometer ride and post that for 2 days, you can't really get out of your bed because you're so tired, you're so drained out, or the whole day, you're really stressed. Doesn't really make sense. Okay, so you need to make sure that your post ride recovery, the foods that work best for you is what you start practicing again. So for example, we spoke about watermelon juice that really helps in recovery. You need to have that before you start off on the ride, or maybe stay on a very long ride like the Deccan Cliffhanger. What you can do is, when you have a longer stopover, okay, at that junction is when you can probably have the watermelon juice. Immediately post the ride, get a good quality protein and get good carbs. That is very, very essential. Okay, so post your training or post your ride, 30 minutes is what is the window of golden opportunity. That means this is the time when your body can use the maximum nutrients in order to help you to recover as well. You need to get a good quality protein. You need to get a good source of high quality protein. You need to get good quality carbs. Okay, so you need to get a good portion of carbs also during this time as well. So start working on this. I think it's a 643 kilometer ride. Figure out where all the stops are and start planning your nutrition also alongside, because that's the only time when you will be able to, what you put into practice at this point during your training is what you will be able to utilize also on the race day. And as a golden rule, never try anything new 1 week prior to your race, because you don't know what your gut is going to be in. Go with foods that are going to be available to you throughout the route very easily, and with foods that your gut is absolutely comfortable with, so that you can complete the run at a good pace and you do it very comfortably as well. Okay, so with that, I would just like to end the session as well, and any questions, etc., is what we can start taking up. Yeah, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Thanks so much. That was very informative. Thank you.
Most
Yeah.
welcome.
Hi, a quick one.
Yeah.
Which the liquid carbohydrate drink that you would suggest? Any particular one?
See, now there are a lot of ones which are available. Okay, you have to understand what
Yeah.
works best for you. So there is, okay, of course, Fasten Up Reload is not an isotonic drink, but it is an hypotonic drink, which means that when you consume it, you don't feel excessively thirsty. An isotonic drink makes you feel excessively thirsty, and you may need to drink a lot of water and a lot of fluids, which is not very ideal always. So a hypotonic drink like a Fasten Up Reload works well, but also apart from that, some people work better even on something known as a fast charge, which is again another isotonic drink which works well. So you need to understand which one that you're using and which one works best for you, and just use that. Also, probably you should also check with what is easily available on the route. Okay, so say for example, if you're doing a solo ride, you may not really be able to carry as much fluid also, right? Of course, there are going to be people, there are going to be supporting people en route, but still you need to probably figure out something that is more convenient and that is more easily available as well. I prefer the Fasten Up Reload because you get it as an effervescence tablet. So the tube is what you can just carry along with you. Wherever you will get water, just put the effervescent tablet into your water and just drink it up. It's for convenient form. It is much better.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Kabir?
Yeah. Hi, Namrata. So
Hi.
I had a question. So because of this viral video of Ronaldo currently, so he put the Coca-Cola side mein and then he took the water. But I
Yeah.
remember we had Coca-Cola in our schedule, like when I am doing the race. So I
Yes.
just want to ask whether any new studies has come up that is not good, or it's still the good drink to have while riding.
So what he did was, of course, a very good thing. I mean, of course, there is no point in promoting a basic aerated drink. Overall, it is not a good idea. So for you, the reason why we used Coke also, if you remember, particularly asked you to use a type of Coke which had phosphoric acid in it. Okay, because phosphoric acid is what helps to reduce the lactic acid in the body, and especially on a very long ride is what you want to reduce the lactic acid buildup that happens in the muscles. So that's the reason why we use that as a strategy for you, because see, understand, you're doing an ultra event, okay? But on a regular basis, to use an aerated drink, of course, is like a complete no. We use that to give you quick source of energy and for the phosphoric acid specifically.
Yeah, correct. So I still use it. So I was just wanted to confirm that, whether I have to use it or I have to discontinue it.
Don't use it daily, Kabir.
Yeah, it's
No,
just for
not
your
daily. So daily parvado bhi nahi hai. So it's okay. While doing the races, it's okay.
Yeah. So one thing we have to keep in mind is that, I mean, what Ronaldo did was because basically they have such a huge viewership, and
Yeah,
those people, those sports personalities are watched by everyone from kids
correct.
to everybody. So what you don't want is that it being normalized, which it is now already. So I think that was what
correct.
his point was.
Exactly.
And for
Yeah,
sure, in ultra endurance and these kind of events, our diet is tweaked and sort of very micromanaged for a specific purpose, which is performance in an event. It is kind of an artificial situation that we are putting our body
Yeah.
through, and we're trying to tweak our diet into that. So I'll
yeah.
call out the names one by one because there's six people lined up. There was Ravi Sharma.
Hi, Namrata. Uh, I just want to know about more about this MCT oil, on where you get it, and
Okay.
uh, you have to made it at home by crushing the coconut, something like that.
So MCT oil actually is your cold pressed coconut oil, which is easily available at most of your supermarkets these days. Okay, so it's not difficult to source it out. but not the regular coconut oil. Remember, it's the cold pressed coconut oil. Okay, so and even if you're looking at buying that, get one which is stored in a glass bottle. Okay, because the plastic, again, when you store it in the plastic, it basically, the free radicals from the plastic is going to just get mixed with your cold pressed oil, and that's not the best thing that you want as well. So buy one which you get in a glass bottle. That is what is very, very essential.
Okay.
Any
Thanks.
specific brand it is there?
So some of the brands that I have tried, one is of course Pure Nutrition. They have a good, again, one that comes in a glass bottle. There is Organic India, which also has it. But there's a lot of other brands and they're equally good. Okay, you can go by whatever is very easily available for you wherever you're based out of.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Kapil?
Hi, Namrata. So my question is, any other way to release the lactic acid during the rides when we take a short break or when we take a night 1 or 2 hour
Correct.
break?
So, not when you take a break, but one way to release or to reduce the lactic acid buildup is baking soda. Okay, so just add a pinch or two of baking soda in your water and keep sipping onto this, because baking soda also basically helps to reduce the lactic acid. So maybe you can try that out. Just a pinch or two, not more than that. Add it to 500 ml of water. So of course, if you're using 1 liter of water, make that half a teaspoon probably. But that also helps to reduce the lactic acid buildup.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Prachi?
Hi, Namrata.
Hi, Prachi.
I want to ask you about any, can you suggest any natural source of phosphoric acid, like non-junk source, which we can consume?
So phosphoric acid actually is more of it's a chemical compound. Okay, so it's not very naturally found in foods. Even if it is found in foods, your body can't really absorb it to the maximum. So sources of that to find naturally in foods that your body can readily utilize is a little difficult.
Okay. And also, do you recommend to use it during training, throughout the training, or only during the actual event?
You can't use anything for the event directly. You will have to use that for your practice. You don't need to use it for the shorter rides, but of course, when you're doing your longer rides, train on it, see how your body is comfortable with it, and then use it on the race day. That is what you will have to do, but you will have to try it prior to your race, because you can't use something on the race day by itself, as a new thing. You will have to try it out.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Someshwar?
Yeah, thank you, Namrata, for wonderful question. You were speaking about this beetroot juice. Can you put more light on that one? How doses of the beetroot will go and how it will help? Means I got what you were speaking about, but I just wanted to more insight on that.
Sure. Okay. So beetroot juice, basically what I was talking about is that beetroot has something known as nitrates in it. Okay. So it's a natural compound which is present in beetroot. What nitrates do in the body is that they help to increase the oxygen carrying capacity. They help to increase your lungs hold oxygen, correct? That's something that everybody knows. It helps to increase the volume of oxygen that your lungs can hold up. And of course, more the oxygen that your lungs can hold up, the better that your endurance gets. Okay, so the better that you get at your basically, if your endurance is better, you'll be able to go on for a longer duration without getting tired. And that is what beetroot basically does. Now, beetroot, when you have it in the form of a juice, okay, so generally, of course, just having plain beetroot is not very palatable for most people. What I generally suggest is that you do beetroot, carrot, apple, you mix these three and you have that as a juice. At least you need to do this 2 hours prior to your event or to your training. I know a lot of you all start training very early in the morning and it may not be possible to have like a beetroot juice. In that case, what I suggest is that you get beetroot powder also. Okay, so dehydrated beetroot powder is also available. Just add 2 spoons of that into water and maybe you can have that if you're training very early in the morning. so that it is easy for you to even, to probably have that 30 to 45 minutes prior to starting off on your training or starting off on your ride as well. So beetroot, carrot, apple is one combination that goes well. Beetroot and coconut water is another combination that goes very well together as well. So you can try out these, and it's going to help you to increase your endurance and your stamina particularly.
Okay, thank you so much. Much clear.
Yes.
Namrata, sorry to jump you in between.
No problem. Yes.
I have found I have tried and tested this beetroot juice, and it really works, and I gain benefits when I ran to marathons. But I wanted to ask that I may not consume before run or ride, so I generally consume post finish my race or running. So is it better?
So see, ideally beetroot juice, like I said, works best when it's had 2 hours prior to an endurance event. Okay, that's the time that it works best. But probably in your case, what has happened is that because you had it every day, right? You've been having it for a while now, and you've made it a point to have it. So of course, even if you're not having prior to your ride, you're having it after that, you're having it some other point of the day. But because you've been having it over a period of time, your body basically builds up on the nitrate stores. Okay, so probably that is what has happened, that automatically, because you've been consuming it very frequently, your body's built up on the nitrate stores, and it is still going to help you as well. So that's absolutely fine. I mean, of course, research shows that 2 hours prior to your to a run or to a ride, to any endurance event, is when it works well. But like I said, it's very individualistic. If it works well for you post the ride, please continue with it. Continue with it if it works for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Mahesh?
Yeah. You said about carbomaltodextrin.
Yes.
Can you suggest any brand for this mouth resin?
So maltodextrin is, I know sports gels which have maltodextrin. Sports drinks that have maltodextrin are not really available right now, at least in India, that I know of, are not really very easily available. There are sports gels which have maltodextrin in them. Okay. One of it, of course, again is Fast Enough, which has. Boo gels again don't have maltodextrin. They're more of your other carbohydrates and a mixture of those. But Fast Enough has a maltodextrin gel which is available. So what you can do is, say for example, if you just so you don't need to have the whole gel pack. You can just take like one, just like a 1 cube of it, just come out. A little bit of water, just swish it in the mouth, and just spit it out. That is the way that you basically follow the strategy. So again, this is something that you will have to train on as well as you go about to.
But the normal mouth resin doesn't have this?
The normal, which mouth rinse?
Mouth rinse, yeah. The normal which we use, mouth rinse, doesn't have this maltodextrin?
You're talking about something like your basic brushing mouth rinse. You're talking about one of those.
Yes.
No, they don't have this. Those are meant for just clearing out. Yeah, they're not really meant to basically have any carbs in them as such. Okay, so no, those don't have it.
Okay, thank you.
Amol?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Namrata, I have a question. Am I audible?
Yes.
What is I have seen one of the slide, BCAA. What is the difference between BCAA and how it is different from electrolytes, and why I should take them?
Okay. The full form of BCAA basically is branch chain amino acids. Okay. Now, if you know we spoke about fuels, okay, which is carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Now, protein is made up, your protein molecule, okay? Any protein molecule is made up of various amino acids, okay, put together, which makes up a protein molecule. Out of these various amino acids, branch chain amino acids are 3 amino acids, which are leucine, isoleucine, and valine, okay? These are 3 of which, when they're put together, they are together called as branch chain amino acids. Now, your muscles, okay, practically are made up of ideally your entire skeletal muscle. The major source of amino acids that it has is your branch chain amino acids. So when you are doing a long event, or if you're doing an activity which is high intensity, like we spoke about, there would be a slight amount of muscle loss that happens in the body, which means that your skeletal muscle loses out on these BCAAs. If your goal, or which of course for most ultra endurance athletes should be, to not lose out on skeletal muscle, to not lose out on body muscle, okay, if you have the branch chain amino acids intra ride or intra your race, it helps to reduce that muscle breakdown. Okay, that's the reason why you would have a branch chain amino acids. Electrolytes, on the other hand, are completely different. Electrolytes basically are your salts. Okay, so sodium, potassium, chloride, those are the salts which you lose when your body sweats. Okay, so any form of activity when you do, when you're sweating, or even when you urinate, your body loses electrolytes via it. Okay, and especially, of course, in our climate, because we are in a more humid climate, the sweat loss along with fluid, your body loses out on electrolytes. So that's the difference between the two. You do intra a long ride, you require carbohydrates, you do require electrolytes, and you do require the amino acids. That's your branch chain amino acids. So it's not like one is replaceable with the other. Okay, you need all three of them.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you. I think we'll take one last question.
Yes.
Is that Reddy? Reddy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Suman. Hi, Namrata. So my question is, let's say I have a hydration mix powder. As you said, it's one of the carbohydrate fluid intake. What could be the ideal limit which you put it on, where you could constantly rely on that instead of having a solid food, or maybe just go with that and complementing it with some gels and water? How long a person can go on like that?
Now see, ideally your body has glycogen reserves, okay, which basically is the carbohydrate that your system or your liver and your muscles can store. In a race or in an event which is extremely long, your body, because it keeps utilizing carbohydrates as a source of fuel, you will run out of those stores. So of course you are sipping onto the fluids, you are sipping onto a drink which has carbohydrates, but at the end of the day, those are just going to help you go on for a particular period of time. Okay, not having anything altogether in a race that could last for 20 hours, 24 hours or more is not very, very ideal, because you will basically not be able to keep going. Okay, you will lose out on the stamina, the endurance, you will reach exhaustion at some point in time, and your body will require the food as a solid food also to keep going. Now the solid food does not need to be, see, if you're not comfortable with eating, it does not need to be a very, very big meal. It can just be something like idlis. Okay, so even if you have like really small tiny idlis, like 2 to 3, that's about it. That's also more than enough, because that's also a source of carb that your body can keep using as well. Or even just white bread, okay, just like 2 slices of white bread with a little bit of jam in between, that's also absolutely fine as well. It can be a very small meal, but you will require that. It's not very, very ideal to keep going to do a very long ride without eating anything, because one is that the strenuous, the situation that you're putting your body under, if you don't fuel it, you will reach exhaustion. Okay, and exhaustion can reach to a point wherein it may be detrimental to health as well. Okay, so it's not a very ideal situation to put yourself under.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Namrata. That was a very sorry.
Jitesh here. Just a follow-up question to what she explained. So, if like for a long ride like our 24 hours or 30 hours ride, we may spend about 30,000 calories. Yeah, that's what we spend. Probably sometimes it is 1,000 calories per hour. Correct. Or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
So what should be the intake in terms of calorie for us to see that at the end of the ride the balance is still intact?
Correct. So that's actually a very good question. that most people, of course, monitor the amount of caloric burnout along with a smartwatch and with a heart rate monitor. Most of you would be doing that to see what is the amount of calories that you're burning per hour of your ride. Okay. Now your eating strategy has to go more or less along with it. It may not, your fueling strategy may not match up. Say, for example, if you're burning 1,000 calories every hour, you can't practically be eating 1,000 calories. Okay, that's absolutely not going to be possible because your gut health will not be able to take that. But at least you should try to match up 40% of what your body is burning. 40. So say about if it's 1,000 calories, at least 400 calories that per hour of your ride is what you should try to make up as well. Of course, the others you can probably pre and post your ride is what. That's the reason why you do the carb loading also, so that you're building up on the stores. And even post the ride or post your training is when you again will be fueling really well in order to match up the loss that has happened. But 40% as a rule is what you should try to at least match up more or less. The complete 100% is practically impossible to match up. That won't really go well with your gut. Like, no, it's absolutely impractical to do that. But 40% is a good percent to try to look up to as well.
Okay, thanks, Namrata.
Thank you. Thanks, Namrata. That was a very informative session.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and hopefully, we'll see improvement in everybody's performance over the next year or so of our races. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, just as a last thing, I would just like to tell you all that even whichever race that you're planning to do, remember that along with your training strategy, your nutrition strategy also starts at least 3 months prior to your race. Okay, so you have to start training on that as well, so that on your race day you are absolutely comfortable with it. Do not try to incorporate anything new on the race day for sure, or even 1 week prior to it, because you don't know how your body will react. But the foods that work best for you during your training is what you should basically just copy paste on the race day. That's what you should basically be doing. Yeah, hopefully all of you will be able to perform to your best.
Yeah. Thank you so much. There's a lot of messages in the chat box thanking you for the informative session, Namrata.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Okay.
Right, I'm going to leave. Yes.
All right. Good night.
Good night.